how much time do you get to spend with family and friends if you're a private investigator? You need to decide what area of investigations you will be working. That may determine how much time you have to put into it. There are a ton of areas that you can choose from, and there is no reason to have to stick to just one or stick to only a few. You can work in many areas of investigation, but you have to remember each area has differing requirements of knowledge, as well may require unique training commitments as well as marketing necessity. Asset investigations, asset locates, background checks, bug sweeps, cell phone forensics, child custody, civil investigations, computer forensics, cyber crimes, corporate, criminal investigations, due diligence, executive protection, financial investigations, fire, fraud, infidelity, cheating spouse, insurance fraud, missing persons, locates and skip traces, process serving public records, open source intelligence, surveillance, wrongful death, and I am sure that there are more that I am forgetting about. Now, the first thing you need to ask yourself is not what type of investigation you are going to be doing. The first thing you need to ask yourself is not how many hours you need to work. And the first thing you need to ask yourself is not how many hours you want to work. The first question you really need to ask yourself is exactly what Lexi asks. How much time do you get to spend with family and friends? In my humble opinion, folks, this should be the most important question that you should be asking regarding becoming a private investigator, or any other profession for that matter, or any question regarding those huge life decisions. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. For me, the answer is simple: as much as I possibly can. Of course, this is within reason. Now, if I had to spend 24 hours a day with all my family and friends, well, that might be just a little overwhelming for me. I do need to have some productive time, such as working, and some me time in my life. Before I tell you how much time I put into my business, let me tell you a little bit about how I got started in this great profession. Prior to being a PI, I worked mostly in the corporate world in operations and upper management positions. I ran companies in the retail and service industries, small companies with a few employees, large companies with thousands of employees, business entities in the United States as well as in Canada, and managing annual budgets in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, back in 2008, I asked myself that very important question. I said, how much time would you like to spend with your family and friends? In asking that question, I realized I had been spending 60, 70, 80 or more hours every week, 52 weeks a year, working as hard as I possibly could, making millionaires millions. At that moment, I decided to make a difference in mine and my family's life. I had spent the prior 5 or so years working with new startup and troubled companies, and let me tell you, most startup and new companies are troubled companies. So I was nearing the end of my current assignment. I knew I was working myself out of a job, as I had successfully split out the current company I was working for into 4 different companies, and I identified buyers for each one of those new companies. So I asked myself, I said, "Self, what are you going to do now?" Then I started to do what I always did. I started looking for new job opportunities, but I knew I wanted to not get another corporate job, and I knew I wanted to be home as much as possible and be able to spend as much time as possible with family and friends. So I came to the conclusion that self-employment may be the best course of action for me. Now, self-employment wasn't new to me either. I had already had several successful home businesses in the past. I just never had one that fulfilled all of my personal goals. So I started searching for my next big adventure. Now, I ran across an ad advertising the need for a surveillance private investigator. No experience required. The rest, as we say, is history. Now, when I started as a PI, I did only surveillance, only on a subcontract basis, working for one larger firm. I did that for about 3 years, working almost every day of the week, working over 125 field cases a year. After working 3 years, working so many hours, I then had to revisit my goals, as I was back in the same old grind, working 60, 70, 80 or more hours a week. Next, I decided to start working for myself, getting my own clients, getting my own contracts, obtaining clients who would pay me more, and work the hours that I needed to work to meet my personal goals. Is this where you are today? Well, hang on. We are just about to get into some really, really good information. Now, how much time should you spend in your PI business? Well, first, Let's do some calculations. You decide how much time you want to be with your friends and family first, and then calculate how much time you have left to work your business. Keep in mind to calculate time for eating and sleeping and some of the other personal time too. For me, when I did this many years ago, I knew that I wanted to work a full-time job 30 to 40 hours a week. The next thing that you need to do is figure out how much you want to make a year. Take the amount you want to make a year, divide that by 50 for 50 weeks a year, leave a couple for vacation, then divide that by the amount of hours that you want to work each week. So if you said that you wanted to work 30 hours a week and make $100,000 annually, then what you would do, you take $100,000, divide it by 50, then divide that by 30, and then you're going to come up with $66.67. That would seem to be relatively easy for an hourly fee today as a private investigator. But, and there's always a but, isn't there? We have to consider business expenses. My experience tells me on average you need to consider around 30 to 40% expenses. So if I take that $66.67 an hour, multiply it by 1.3 and 1.4 to represent 30% and 40% expense rate, I need to charge somewhere between $87 an hour and $93 an hour. Now, does that appear doable for a private investigator today? It does to me. From my experience, I would say that most private investigation firms and companies out there are charging in the range of $85 to $100 per hour today. So if you want to work 30 hours a week, have plenty of time with your family and friends, you then need to plan your business with this in mind. It won't come easy, folks. It won't come quickly, folks. It won't just fall into place just because, but it is very possible reality for you to accomplish it if you put in the hard work for the right purpose and you stick to it. Remember, I worked almost exclusively over 3 years for one firm on a subcontract basis, making, get this, $25 an hour. No mileage pay, no travel pay, no time for report or video editing. If you do the math, working 6 days a week, I was able to make at max $62,000 a year. That was not exactly where I wanted to be, but instead of making millionaires millions for those 3 years, I took it on as a long-term training opportunity for myself, and I got the necessary experience that I needed to sell my services to my own clients when I broke into the profession on my own.